If you have ever immersed yourself in the world of the Viking series, you have most certainly been enthralled by the captivating and alluring way of life of these legendary warriors. The awe-inspiring stature of their physical forms, their extraordinary nimbleness, their unyielding determination, their crafty strategies, and their steadfast loyalty have profoundly influenced their cultural, religious, political, and literary heritage. Although the Viking era predates the contemporary discourse on sexual orientation, it is truly intriguing to delve into their open-mindedness toward diverse ways of living. The existence of same-sex relationships within Viking society was not uncommon, serving as a testament to their inclusive and accepting perspective regarding various forms of love and longing. This aspect introduces an additional layer of intricacy to the already vibrant tapestry that defines the Viking civilization, thereby showcasing their ever-evolving and dynamic nature. Who were the Vikings? The Vikings, often referred to as the Norsemen or Scandinavian pirates, were fearless seafarers hailing from the lands of Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. Flourishing between the late 8th and early 11th centuries, they left an indelible mark on history through their audacious exploits. The word Viking encompasses those of Scandinavian descent during this remarkable era. Renowned for their ferocious spirit, the Vikings embarked on daring voyages that took them to the far corners of the world. From North America to Africa and Asia, they targeted vulnerable communities, perceiving them as ripe for plunder. But the Vikings were far more than mere plunderers. Their origins can be traced back to the Germanic tribes, including the Danes and the Swedes, and their influence stretched across Scandinavia, which encompassed present-day Norway, the Faroe Islands, Denmark, Sweden, and Greenland. As their numbers grew, driven by the desire for sustenance, the Vikings expand their horizons. They set their sights on new lands, establishing settlements throughout Europe. From the British Isles to the breathtaking landscapes of Iceland, their presence was felt far and wide. Their ambitious nature led them even further, with evidence suggesting that they may have ventured as far as North America. Yet, the Vikings were not solely warriors and conquerors. They were astute traders who engaged in commerce with the Byzantine Empire and the Islamic Caliphate. These interactions enabled them to acquire coveted treasures like silk and spices, enriching their own culture while fostering connections with distant lands. The Vikings' seafaring prowess was unmatched. They honed their sailing and navigation skills, crafting ships designed for exceptional speed and maneuverability on the open seas. However, with time, the era of Viking raids and plundering began to wane. The Vikings gradually shifted their focus, settling down and embracing Christianity. This transition marked the end of an epoch defined by seafaring exploits and heralded a new chapter in their history: Viking and homosexuality. First and foremost, according to scholarly research, the Vikings held a remarkably different perspective on homosexuality compared to many other societies of their time. They did not view it as inherently wrong, twisted, or contrary to the laws of nature. Instead, their understanding of same-sex relationships was filtered through a lens of power dynamics, where certain men played subordinate roles to stronger individuals. This belief stemmed from the notion that absorbing the essence of a powerful deity could be achieved through various means, including sexual encounters. The sagas, the oral narratives of Viking stories later transcribed into written form, provide valuable insights into Viking attitudes towards homosexuality. For instance, in the saga of Eric the Red, there is mention of Thorbjorn, who experiences sexual desires for other men. This implies that homosexuality was recognized and same-sex sexual behavior was not uncommon in Viking society. However, it is important to note that the Vikings did not possess a specific term for homosexuality, which aligns with the idea that sexual orientation did not hold significant concern for them. Literature and artwork that have survived from the Viking era further support the notion that same-sex conduct was widely accepted in their civilization. It reveals a time when people allowed love to flourish between individuals regardless of their gender. However, evidence also suggests that while same-sex conduct may have been relatively unproblematic for some, homosexuality was not the prevailing norm within Viking society. This may explain the scarcity of written records specifically addressing this topic. While the Vikings did not leave behind an abundance of explicit documentation on homosexual relationships, fragments of evidence can be found scattered throughout Norse mythology, sagas, and laws, indicating that homosexuality was indeed a part of Viking culture. These fragments hint at a society that embraced diverse expressions of love and desire, recognizing the complexities and variations of human relationships. Relationship with men's. Expected. The pre-Christian Norse beliefs regarding homosexuality were far from straightforward. On the surface, Norse society appeared to welcome male-male sexual unions, but there were constraints that had to be navigated for conservative members of society to tolerate such relationships. For starters, these partnerships could not jeopardize any current or future marriages. Regardless of a man's feelings towards the opposite sex, he was expected to marry, and his wife and family had to be willing to disregard his male lover or lovers. It was critical that the man did not overlook his conjugal responsibilities and still desired sexual relations with his wife. Maintaining dominance in any kind of relationship was paramount for most Norse males. In addition to this, Viking men sought to impose their superiority whenever they were on a raid. Their methods, however, were far from admirable. They would take advantage of both men and women, seeking to humiliate, degrade, and weaken them. Being passive in a relationship meant being subservient, at least during that era. It was permissible and even pleasurable to subject someone to such treatment, but being on the receiving end was utterly unacceptable. Sordid was one of the deadliest insults an opponent might hurl at a Norseman. Consequently, they went to great lengths to avoid such confrontations, and most of the time, any man with such a moniker would fight to the death to preserve his honor. Given the potential for violence, Scandinavian law systems deemed such insults unlawful, with the slanderer frequently outlawed if the aggrieved party didn't murder them first. However, if such abuse was believed or verified, it had dire consequences for the offender. Speaking of laws, there was another concept that was considered illegal: same-sex sexual activity. The severity of the punishment was determined by the gravity of the offense. According to the law of Gulathing, outlawry, the penalty was death. This demonstrates the significance placed on masculinity in Viking civilization. According to the law, a person who was aggrieved by another party had the right to murder them. This concept underscores the gravity of the offense and the cultural importance placed on preserving one's honor. Numerous words in Old Norse referred to homosexuality, but their usage was tightly regulated. On the one hand, the penalty for using terms like Regan, Stroin, or Soren was outlawed. The person who had been humiliated had the right to kill the individual who had offended them. These three words were directly tied to the concept of homosexuality in Old Norse society. Labeling a man as sexually submissive or used was exceedingly troublesome and terrible in such a masculine environment. These verbal offenses were equated with killing, rape, and adultery, and were considered more flagrant than bodily injury. In a related vein, any implication of femininity or disgraceful behavior involving women directed towards a man was also deemed illegal and even more terrible than physical injuries. Surprisingly, murder, rape, and adultery were not considered the most serious crimes under Norse law. Instead, the use of specific phrases directed towards men held greater weight. These penalties may appear extreme, but one must consider the portrayal of Vikings in popular media. Often depicted as big, muscular warriors, it is not difficult to imagine how they would view homosexuality in such a warrior-oriented society and era. That's all for this video. We will see you in the next video.